So now that we've established what kind of extras they bring on for the program, let's talk about the professionals they're using on the program. And this wouldn't even have been a thing because nobody watches Collision on Saturday nights. We've established that, except again, there was a sequence that was so stunning to behold that people clipped it and put it up on Twitter and like, what the fuck? And I saw this thing and I even wrote, I said, can someone with a pro wrestling experience tell me what was supposed to be going on here? And there's been a lot of debate about it, but it was the match between poor Dax Harwood and Chris Jericho on Collision for what was Saturday night, the 11th or so? Yes, it was. I'll answer that for you.
It was
because it was a week after January 4th, and that's a red letter day. But you saw this. Did you see the match, or you saw the clip, or what did you see here?
I saw the clip once you retweeted it, and I said, "Oh, we're absolutely going to have to review this. So let me watch Collision because I had it on DVR." And I watched the majority of Collision. I skipped Shibata versus Garcia.
Oh,
because there was just no way I was watching that fucking match. But I saw most of the rest of it.
Well, okay.
Big Bill got choked out. Big Bill, 7 feet tall, whatever he is, all jacked up like he's about to sign with WWE, got choked out by Edge. Because, Moxley chokes people out. So now the Cope has to choke people out to show that he could do it too, like the kids.
Big Bad Bill. Every morning at the set, you could see him arrive. He had a glazed over look in his eyes because he knew he was going to get choked out. Big Bad Bill.
Big Bill.
Thank you, Rhythm Section. Or who was Tennessee Ernie Ford's backup, guys? Did he at one point had a combo behind him, didn't he? Nevertheless, Chris Jericho and Dax Harwood, I watched the whole match after I got a taste of the finish. And then we're going to talk about the controversy that ensued afterwards when everybody's starting to... All right. So they started the match with the old deal where they grab a collar and elbow tie up, as the commentators you say, the referees hold. And you've seen the guys where they struggle around the ring and then they'll fall through the ropes and never let go of the fucking collar and elbow, and they're on the ground, and boy, it looks like two bulls struggling. So this is the way they're going to start this match out. And the problem was they had one bull and they had one swayback mule because Jericho lost the goddamn collar and elbow and just fell head first out around the top of Dax. And then they locked up again and went all around ringside. And there was an old lady that looked like she ought to have been in a wrestling crowd in 1980. She was in the front row and she was laughing at him. Because did you see the camera shot where they're locked up at the front row and bulling around on the railing and everybody's just laughing at him? It's not just them two. It's this crowd now just comes to laugh at these people, don't they? If there was 200 and something pound guys that had some aura of we mean this, jerking each other around a foot away from you, and you're a 55-year-old woman from a trailer park, wouldn't you sit your ass back down in the fucking seat just at least to get away?
You would think so, but it takes two.
Have you ever been a 55-year-old woman from a trailer park?
Only a few times in my life. But, the thing is, Dax, whatever you want to say about the booking of them and everything else, he acts serious out there. If you have Jericho, whose entire gimmick is that he's a gimmick, why should you treat anything he does right in front of you seriously?
And that's the thing is, he's trying to do this shit, is Chris. But Dax gives him a dragon screw, and Jericho fell way over the top of it. I don't know what the fuck was going on. And they did the deal where...
He heard dragon screw, he started looking for the bar.
That was in catering. And they did the deal where Dax is going to nut Jericho on the ring post, pulling his legs, and Jericho's supposed to pull his legs up, and Dax would be posted, but Jericho, the leg pull, Dax just had to run into it himself. And they were in quicksand. And Dax is trying here. But goddamn, at one point, the break spot was Jericho doing a Hurricane Rana off the top rope. But if you watch the picture in picture, he then had to stand and wave at everybody with that stupid hi guys for 45 seconds. It reminded me when I saw Roger Waters do the wall. He was fucking 70 whatever, and he had to go back behind the wall and breathe. And then he'd come back out and he'd just walk from the middle of the stage to one side and slowly raise his arms while the other guys are playing. And then he'd walk over to the other side and slowly raise his arms while the other guys are playing. That's how he got through the fucking thing, right? Jericho's Roger Waters in the commercial break. So then, and I'm pretty sure I know who called this, because at one point, Dax fired up on Jericho, pickled him, bing, bing, and grabbed his arm and shot him off and took a shoulder tackle. Dax didn't call that. It had to be Jericho calling that. You would learn that in wrestling school. You don't fucking take a shoulder tackle when you shoot the guy off. You're in control. So Dax kind of stutter-stepped like he looked down for a minute because he had to. But that doesn't make any fucking sense. And so anyway, then
Why would Jericho call it?
Because I think he's just lost. I don't know why he's doing any of this shit. But you would think, as technically perfect as Dax and Cash are with tag team rules and the blind tags and the intricate double team maneuver, he's not going to fucking shoot a guy off and stand there and take a shoulder tackle. The fuck? Ugh. We've stopped workouts in OVW for that. Even that Jericho tries to do the lion salt. He landed, thankfully, hands first, but followed by his face. And then his dick landed in Dax's face. And the fans went, ooh, like not like, oh, what a move, ooh, like somebody got hurt. We can't really tell who. And then, again, there's supposed to be a double leg kickoff for Dax to go into the post, and Dax had to look like he was shot out of a cannon from. And then they got to do the superplex, right? For whatever reason.
No, they didn't have to, and they had an out, and they still didn't have to.
Well, yes. Jericho goes to the top. Dax stops him. He's going to hook him up for the superplex. Jericho's trying to climb up on top. His foot slips off the turnbuckle, and he drops back down to the bottom rope. So right there, they could have fought into something. He could have pushed Dax off, boom, gone for a fucking elbow miss, whatever the fuck, right? Instead, Dax is just like, oh, here, Chris, let me help you. And Chris is like, okay, steady me while I climb up here. And then a big superplex. And at that point, I thought, Jericho looks like a bloated Greg Allman. It's just... Instead of changing his gimmick all the time, just get a full bodysuit at this point. Or get Cher, one or the other.
Or play the Beacon. Just one or the other.
Just one of those things. I think he'll get Cher before he'll play the Beacon. Anyway, then they traded a bunch of chops, and then first they set the finish up in a way that buried the match to begin with and was a distraction for the fans rather than an enhancement. It wasn't a flavor enhancer. It was a fucking sour pickle. Jericho gets the belt. But Dax rolls out on the floor and stops him, and they drop the belt on the apron of the ring. And the referee's in the ring, allegedly counting, but leaves the belt there. Jericho then kicks Dax into the steps and gives him the code breaker on the floor, which I swear to God, I don't think people don't get that, because it looks like Jericho's knocking the fuck out of himself and barely touching the guy. You know the code breaker where he jumps up and he pulls the guy down onto his knee as he takes a flat back bump.
Yeah.
So on the fucking floor, wouldn't that
hurt you?
Be more destructive to okay. But anyway, he gives Dax that, and then Jericho rolls in the ring, and the referee's still ignoring the belt. It's just sitting there on the apron. And he's counting, and Dax beats the count at 9. And then they start wrestling again, where Dax gets the sharpshooter, and Jericho gets the ropes. The belt is still there, and the referee's done nothing. Now Jericho, and meanwhile, people are thinking, well, something's got to happen with that fucking belt, or just they're seeing the belt in the arena looking down. Even if you're not seeing it on television, all the people in the arena that are your audience that you're trying to get the reaction out of now they know something's up with his fucking belt. And then Jericho goes over and gets the belt as the referee is somehow admonishing Dax, and Dax has his back turned. So Dax turns toward Jericho with the belt. The referee is behind Dax. Jericho swings the belt. Dax ducks, but so does the goddamn referee, even though the belt would have to be 12 feet long to have hit him from where the instigator of the swing was good, but it was like a double duck spot. Okay. So then after Dax and the referee duck, Dax snatches Jericho and gives him the belly to back suplex, the big boom Greco-Roman backdrop type of thing that Luthez used to use. And Jericho had the belt in his hand, so when Jericho lands, he drops the belt next to him. Now, the referee had no reason not to see this belt flying out of in Jericho's hands when he was way up in the air, or when he landed. What did he think? A fucking filling fell out of his tooth? I don't know what. But the belt flies down, and then
he's known for losing belts.
He's known for losing belts, unlike Michaels. But then Jericho looks over and sees the belt laying there and shoves it further away from him, like he's trying to get rid of this evidence, making an attempt so the referee wouldn't see it, right? Okay. So then, meanwhile, Dax is going to the top rope in the corner across the fucking ring.
To do what? What was he going to do?
Well, we're going to find out in a minute, maybe. The concept, the theory of the thing, because while he's gone all the way over to this other corner instead of the corner that Jericho's kind of laying in front of, the referee now has looked down at Jericho laying there, and Jericho's turtled up at him on his back, trying to tell him something, I think, and it looks like Jericho just reaches up and tries to poke him in the eye. But since it was a hard camera shot, you really couldn't see what the fuck was going on. But the announcers were saying, I believe Jericho may have poked the referee in the eye. But the referee, Bryce Remsburg, instead of, he refereed the Invisible Man one time, so somebody should gouge his eyes out. When he takes the poke from him being bent over, he immediately more or less runs forward and not dives out, but just leans over the second rope and is like somebody threw acid in his fucking face. And he's over there. Well, now Dax is going to come off the top rope now, we've figured out, because he's got to the top right as the referee looks like he's puking out on the floor. And Jericho now reaches and grabs the belt that he just fucking shoved away from himself and is trying to pull it toward him as Dax comes off with a diving headbutt. But, I mean, this could be analyzed like the Zapruder film, but Dax, I think, gave him the diving headbutt, and Jericho, the belt was laying on the other side of Dax, and if Jericho was trying to pull the belt on top of him so Dax would headbutt the belt, it didn't make it. And Dax turned, after he landed the diving headbutt on Jericho, turned over and looked like he may have said, fuck. And then he immediately stood up and he walked on and turned his back on Jericho to go check on the referee, who was still selling his eye, leaned over the rope. Jericho then picks the belt up again. And Dax, after Dax sees for 2 seconds that the referee is still blind and potentially his eyeballs are hanging out because the guy hadn't let go of his face, he turned around to go back to Jericho, and Jericho hit him over the head with the title belt. and Dax took the bump, and then Jericho dropped the belt, and he fell down. And the referee is still leaning through the ropes with his back turned, and the crowd is not only booing by this, it's hoot booing. It's the like, boo, no, this is rotten. And
yeah, it sounds a lot more fluid than it was as you describe it.
No, what, the finish? It was much less fluid than I described it. And then the referee turns around, and Jericho is crawling over to, if he threw the belt out, I don't know why he had to take a bump. He obviously did something to the motherfucker. It's been 5 minutes since the referee turned around. Referee drops down and counts. Jericho's got him covered. 1, 2, and Dax kicks out. All of that wasn't even the fucking finish.
That was the funniest part of the whole thing. I laughed when he kicked out.
And then they both stood up on opposite sides of the ring, and Dax stood there while Jericho trotted at him, turned his back on him, spun around and hit the Judas elbow and covered him 1, 2, 3.
You see the bump he took off the Judas?
Yes, it was like the fucking one of the other disciples. Just get me out of here. That was the finish, and the other thing wasn't the finish. None of what the fuck was the finish? It's supposed to be before they did what they did with the finish.
If you're a referee and the finish is screwed up and you're supposed to be hit with the belt, should the next thing be rake my eyes so I can't see?
Well, no, but he wasn't supposed to be hit with the belt because he ducked too. But the question is, when then Dax got Jericho, who had spun his back when he swung it, got Jericho in the belly to back. Was Jericho supposed to hit Dax with the belt when he was up in the air on the head? Because that's an old finish that heels would do with like a chain or brass knucks or not a goddamn belt, because you can't maneuver those heavy things like that. And he fumbled it. And the referee was then, after he ducked, he was going to not see that. And that was the false finish. Or was it...
Just focusing on that, though, ignores that Jericho did not look good throughout the whole match.
Well, no, because there's more. There's more of what ifs. Now, but then if that's the case, then they had to... When they landed, if Jericho felt like he had accomplished it, he would shove the belt farther away from him. But if he felt like he hadn't, he would still need it somehow. But yet, why would Dax be going across the other side of the ring to do a diving headbutt unless he thought he was going to diving headbutt the belt, which Jericho then had to poke the referee in the eye? I don't know.
It was like a series of things happening, and you couldn't figure out what anything was, and then another thing would happen. Like, whoa, where did he come from? Oh, he just landed there. I guess that was a headbutt.
Oh, and by the way, then Big Bill and Brian Keith came in and started kicking shit out of Dax, and Edge and Cash came in, and my DVR froze in the nick of time. But